Hello, this is Spartan Commander, and this is the 320th Rome Total War Brotherhood game that I've put onto YouTube. Straight away you'll see this is not fought on the usual flat map. This is fought on the Nordic woodland map. I like this map because it's flat, got big wide open plains, but you can also fight in the woods if you want to spring ambushes and things like that. Or if you want to bring barbarian troops, you can always fight in the woods there. Now, unusually, I don't mention about a battle that we're about to watch, but this is an unusual battle. Something happens very rare that happens these days, and we might have to get our tactical thinking caps on to see if we can resolve what happens. Let's say you don't see this very often, what's going to happen in this battle. But as I say, we might have to get our tactical thinking caps on to see how we're going to resolve it. Okay, our first teammate is RTW player Maximus. I think Maximus is a newer player to Rome Total War, but seems to be a very good 31k player. As you can see, he's bought the Rome Scipio faction. I think he's got something like 12 infantry, 2 archers, and 5 cavalry. Just have a quick look on the upgrades of his cavalry for newer players to Rome Total War, and as you can see, he's only put 6 upgrades. So that's just gold shield, gold attack on his Praetorian cavalry. I notice he's unusually got the Cav general here, and he's got 8 upgrades on his armoured cavalry general. As you can see, the general there. So that's 2 experience stripes, gold shield, gold attack on his general. So that's a pretty good army there. It'll be interesting to see how well it does during the course of the battle. Our next teammate is a well-known RTW player called Lee, and he has bought the Rome SBQR faction. Now, I'd just like to draw your attention to Lee's army here. He's got 19 infantry and a cavalry general. So that's 19 infantry. That equates to 1,558 men. Okay. Now, each one of those men can throw 3 pilers. So that equates to 4,674 pilers. 4,674. So that's a lot of pilers that army can throw and cause a lot of casualties. But the big question is, will 19 infantry make up for a lack of cavalry? If you have a look at his general here, you can see that his general's got 7 upgrades. That's an experience stripe, gold shield, gold attack. So let's say there's 4,674 pilers, but will that army, that much infantry, make up for a lack of cavalry? Our next teammate is Brotherhood member Legion 22, who has bought the Rome Brutio faction. Looks like he's got maybe 12 or so infantry there. He's got some infantry, I think, hiding in the woods. Let's have a look at the upgrades on his infantry. Right, can you see the upgrades on his infantry are 7 upgrades, so that's an experience stripe, gold shield, gold attack. That makes these infantry tough. That experience stripe really does make a difference during the course of the battle. As you see, he's got 3 archers. As I say, I think he might something have a region of about 12 infantry or so. Let's have a look at the upgrades on his archers. So unusual to have just 5 upgrades. So I'm just thinking maybe that's 3 attack and silver defense possibly there. And let's have a look at his cavalry upgrades. Okay, he got 7 upgrades. So that's an experience stripe, gold shield, gold attack. And I think one of his units just had gold shield, gold attack. You have some of his units hiding in the woods there. And our last teammate is myself, Spartan Commander, who has bought the Rome Scipio faction. Now, this is another one of my old armies, but I've got an extra infantry unit. I've got 13 infantry and just 5 cavalry for this battle. So as I say, something unusual happens in this battle. It should be an interesting one for you to watch. And here is the other team. We have RTW player Greek USA King Almighty, who has bought the Pontus faction. Looks like he's got about 14 units of pike units there. As you can see, he's got 7 upgrades on his bronze shieldsman there. So that's an experience stripe, gold shield, gold attack. And if you look at the length of those pikes, remember that Roman troops have to fight down those pikes to kill the man on the other end. And he's got his Cappadocian cavalry. Let's see how much he got there. I think he's got about, I think I spotted 7 upgrades on that Cappadocian cavalry. So that's an experience stripe, gold shield, gold attack. You don't often see the Cappadocian cavalry, so it'll be interesting to see how well it does during the course of the battle. Looks like a pretty good army there. He may well have hidden units as well. Their next teammate is RTW player Trajan. Trajan has played with us a lot in our 31k game. Seems to be a very good player. And as you can see, he's bought the Greek cities faction there. Got 20 units of spearmen there, a mixture of Spartan hoplites and just the armoured hoplites there. My guess is they use the armoured hoplites to absorb pilas as their pilot shield units. Their next teammate is Brotherhood member Lightsaber. Now if you notice he's got the Macedon faction, but I'd just like to draw your attention to his formation there. Can you see it looks like an all-round formation? Not just facing us, but like a, if you like a defensive formation there, set up right from the beginning. I see he's got 2 peasant units there, 120-man peasant units. I'm guessing they're to be his pilot shield units there. But that's an unusual formation right at the start of a battle there. And my guess is he's probably got his cavalry hidden in the woods. That's what I'm guessing there. Probably usually brings about 6 cavalry, so it'll be interesting to see what happens during the course of the battle. And their last teammate is Brotherhood member Mars, who has bought the Carthage faction. I think he's got 14 Sacred Band units there. Let's have a look at the upgrades. 7 upgrades. That's an Experience Stripe, Gold Shield, Gold Attack. So that makes those troops really good. And he's got an armoured cavalry general there, fully upgraded. So his armoured cavalry general's got 9 upgrades. And if you notice, he's got cavalry hiding in the woods there, where I think a lot of them have, a lot of these enemy units here are hiding in the woods. He's got 4 cavalry units, and I think they got 6 upgrades on each. So that's a Gold Shield, Gold Attack on his cavalry units there, which I'm sure he'll keep hidden in the woods from us. So there's the enemy team. As I say, what they decide to do in this battle is unusual, and as I say, we might have to get our tactical thinking caps on to see how we can resolve a problem that's about to arise. Okay, this very, very early stage of the battle, I think you can see what's happening here. You can see that the enemy are going to form a massive defensive formation here. Now, if you think about that, all their factions are spear and pike units, and if they do form a massive defensive formation here, this could be incredibly difficult for us to break. When I saw that Macedon faction there in the position that they were in, with that all-round defensive position there, I was wondering whether the enemy might be thinking about doing this. And it looks very much like they are. It looks like, as I say, they're forming up some kind of massive defensive box. As you can see, the Pontus player's now bringing his pikes over as well. But as I say, this is massive. You can see they got their Cretan archers out the front there, probably on auto fire. So when our troops get into range, they'll be fired at by those Cretan archers. But as you can see here, that is one big, massive box that's being formed. As you can see there, the Pontus pikemen are now coming over as well to add their weight to this defensive box. So as I say, here our team might have to get our tactical thinking caps on here on how we're going to attack such a massive defensive formation. Should be a good one to watch. Okay, so as I said, this is a very early stage of the battle. We saw the Pontus general bringing his pikes across now, and now he's just adding his pikes to this big defensive box here. As I said at the beginning of the battle here, this is unusual to see such a massive defensive box here of all spear and pike troops. So as I say, our team, as you saw, we're all roam, and we're going to have to really think about this tactically, how we're going to try and attack this. As you can see, we're moving our cavalry around as well. But up against this many spears and pikes, obviously we have to be very, very careful how we use our cavalry here. It would have to be like tactical surgical hits and things like that. But as I say, that is some kind of massive defensive box. Some people call it a noob box, but I tend not to use that phrase. I think it's exactly what it is. It is a defensive formation, and a big one at that, and we've got to try and break it. Okay then, so just pause the game here just to have a look at this formation here and how we might be able to tackle it. As you can see there, Legion and Lee are coming in over kind of in the right centre and right flank of the formation there. They've got the Greek city general in the centre of the formation, the Macedon general in the centre formation as well, protecting the generals, giving morale bonus to all their troops. I see the Pontus general's quite protected as well. So they've got their 3 generals protected all the time, giving their troops a big morale bonus. Usually with these defensive boxes, we usually try and go in on the corners if we could see, because that's usually a weak spot, but you can see we've got to fight down these long pikes here. and they've covered the corners quite well from what I can see there. You can see the Carthage general there, cavalry general. I don't know whether that's a mistake, bringing a cavalry general there. I suppose he can sit in the middle of those pikes if he wants to, or he can move them around. So maybe it's not a mistake there. But you can see this massive pike box here is going to be difficult to break. If you'd just like to know, just a matter of interest there, excluding peasants and archers, there are 5,495 heavy infantry in that box. So that's 5,495 spearmen and pikemen in that box. And of course, having these troops in such a small area of the map, it does tend to cause a little bit of lag to start off with. You'll notice that to start off with in this battle, there is quite a bit of, a bit of lag anyway. But as you all know, playing RTW, if you have this many troops in a small area on a map, then it does tend to cause a little bit of lag there. But as the game progresses, you'll find that it starts speeding up a little bit. So as I say, we just got to try and think about now how we're going to attack this box. Could be very difficult tactically to do this. As I say, they got their generals well protected, given that general morale bonus. But I think it was a good move by Lee, bringing 19 infantry units. Remember, he's got 4,674 pilots to throw, and we know that these big units, the big 120-man units, are very susceptible to archer fire. Right, if you notice, I'm bringing my army over to the flank, and Maximus is bringing his army over to the flank as well. Brought my cavalry over there. You can see that the Carthage Sacred Band cavalry are there, and I know that there are going to be enemy cavalry hidden in other parts of the woods as well. I can see some Cappadocian cavalry over there in the woods as well. So not only have we got these thousands of pikemen to contend with, we know that they've got hidden cavalry as well, which we will have to watch our backs. So as I say, we've got to concentrate on trying to break this, crack this defensive formation if we can, but also we've got to keep an eye on our rear as well, watching out for hidden enemy cavalry. Now, as I say, we're going to have to get our tactical thinking caps on here on how we're going to break this formation. As you can see, it looks very formidable. And as I say, the number of their troops in that formation, excluding archers and peasants, is 5,495. So that's a heck of a lot of troops. It probably will intimidate our infantry because there's so many enemy troops. As I say, usually the corners you go for on these defensive boxes, but as you can see, they're quite well covered there. They've covered those well with those long pikes. Let's have a look at the other corner at the other end. Maybe that might be a way through there into the flank of those Pontus troops, maybe. As I say, when you're in this type of position, you've got to look for weak spots in this defensive formation, a way to try and break through. See, maybe that corner of the box, would that look a bit vulnerable? Maybe we could send a heavy attack in there. And you've got the Pontus pikemen out here extended a bit on the right. Now there, of course, I think the Pontus probably be the weakest troops in the enemy formation there. So maybe Lee may well target them. But as you can see, we've got lots of pilots to throw, which we will weaken them before we go in. So as I say, that's a massive defensive box there that we're going to try and break. But as I say, we will do a lot of damage with our pilots. Right, can you see Legion's troops? Can you see distraught over the number of enemies? So those units there that are distraught, their morale will be very low already before they even get into the actual combat, the hand-to-hand combat. They're so scared of the numbers of the enemy in front of them. Well, as I say, there are 5,495 of them, so I guess the Roman troops have got a bit of a right to be a little bit distraught over the numbers there. But as I say, we're trying to look for weak spots in this defensive formation here where we might be able to exploit. That's what we're looking to do here. I just wondered, you know, all of you watching this, how would you go about attacking this defensive formation? As you can see, I've brought my infantry army round to that flank there. Both Maximus and myself have got our cavalry out the rear there, looking out for enemy cavalry. But as I say, just all of you watching this, how would you go about attacking this massive defensive formation? As I can see the Carthage cavalry in behind my troops there. I see Lee's using his general there to make sure that he's chasing down routing troops to stop them rallying. So well done to Lee there. As I say, having this many troops in such a small part of the map, it does, to start off with, cause a little bit of lag, as you can see the troops are moving a little bit slower than they normally would. But as the battle continues, very shortly you'll start finding that it will speed up. But as I say, with so many troops in one part of the map, it does cause a little bit of lag. But let's go back to the main thing here. How would you, looking at this massive formation, how would you tend to break this formation? As I say, normally we look for vulnerable parts of a formation like the corners, but the corners look quite well defended in this formation, and I thought it was nice how they've got all their generals in the middle of their formation. As I say, well protected, still giving the general morale bonus. Right, can you see that Carthage Sacred Band Cavalry looking to come in behind my infantry there? They could hit me straight in the rear, and then all of a sudden the Carthage general decides to stop and pull back. Now, I'm not sure why he decided to stop and pull back. Maybe my cavalry, maybe thought that maybe if he gets entanglement with my infantry and my cavalry come in, his cavalry would be routed. But I could see, for all intents and purposes, he's going to smash into the rear of my infantry there. Right, if you notice, I've dispensed with the pilot shield of my army, because you don't need that obviously against pikes. And if you notice that Lee is the first of us to start actually getting into hand-to-hand combat with the enemy troops there. Now, he knows that the Pontus troops are probably the weakest troops in this enemy formation here. And so that's why he's attacking them. He's probably thrown loads of pilots in already to weaken those units, and now he's attacking them. This could be a weak part of the box here where so many Pontus troops are. That may be what he's looking at there. Notice how he's got his cavalry general there by his troops, giving the morale bonus there. And if you notice there, he's really attacking there. As I say, maybe he spotted that with so many Pontus troops there, that might be a weak area to attack. If you notice here, I've moved my infantry forward, right up against the boundaries of that defensive box there. And I should start throwing loads of pilers in there. As you can see there's pilers already going in. I'm already throwing loads of pilers into that enemy formation, trying to cause as many casualties as I can before we actually get into the hand-to-hand combat. So as I say, when you're attacking these defensive formations, throw all your pilers, weaken them as much as you can in the area that you decide you want to attack, and then throw your troops in. As you can see, they were pushing in from all sides. A lot of the sides of this defensive box now are under pressure. Now, the only thing I will say to you is that with these defensive boxes and their troops being so close together, if you start routing troops, it's like an infection. You know, when people live together and someone gets an infection, we all catch it, don't we? Well, it's like, because all those troops are so close together, if we could start routing some of those units, then it'd be like an infection. We could maybe get a chain rout going, where, as I say, each unit would be infected by the routing units. So this strong defensive formation is very formidable, but as I say, if we could just get a chain reaction going, because those troops are so integrated, so close together, that could start, as I say, a chain rout. So that's one thing that we could look at. If you notice, a lot of the outer troops of this formation are the Pontus troops, so they've taken a lot of pilot damage and have got a lot of pressure on them at the moment. As you can see, Legion there with his green Brutii troops pushing forward. Maximus has already got troops engaged. As we said, Lee was the first of us to start getting into hand-to-hand combat. But we are very aware of the hidden enemy cavalry. You can see the Cappadocian cavalry out in the woods. You've got the Sacred Band cavalry there as well. I haven't seen where the Macedon cavalry is, but I'm pretty sure there will be Macedon cavalry, the companion cavalry there hidden as well. So we need to not just watch what's going on in front of us, but we need to watch our rear for enemy cavalry attacks. So as you can see here, we're really putting the pressure on. Legion's positioned his archers really well, slightly up on the slope there, if you notice, firing arrows into the enemy formation. I notice he's shooting fire arrows, so of course they don't only cause casualties, they actually cause morale loss as well. Fire arrows, as I say, cause morale loss there. But we are watching out for the enemy cavalry in behind us as well. If you notice, Legions, if you notice, there's some of the enemy units rallying there, some of the pike units and spear units rallying there. If you notice, Lee has got some of his infantry turned outwards there in anticipation of cavalry attack. Maximus and myself have got our cavalry ready over on our flank there. But if you notice, can you see that there's some Sacred Band cavalry moving towards Legion's cavalry there, and Legion's archers. Right, as I say, we're putting a lot of pressure on this defensive box here now. Remember, we would have caused hundreds, if not thousands, of casualties with our pilers in that box. Right, can you see here, the Sacred Band Cavalry are fighting Legion's Green Brutii Cavalry here. Now, if the enemy cavalry beat Legion here, then his cavalry will all be routed, he'll lose his archers, and the enemy will have cavalry in behind or engaged troops. So let's hope that Legion can manage to win here. I notice he's alt-attacked with his archers, so they'll have their daggers out there fighting that cavalry as well. So he's got his cavalry and alt-attack archers there fighting those Sacred Band Cavalry. The same back to the defensive box here. You can see we're really pressurising that box. But back to where Legion was fighting, can you see that the Pontus Cappadocian Cavalry are now attacking him as well? So he's not just got Sacred Band Cavalry, which are really good cavalry, he's got that Cappadocian Cavalry attacking him as well there. He's doing really well to hold as long as he did there, I think, against all that cavalry. But as I say, if the enemy cavalry wins there, they can come in behind us. Right, can you see he's only got one cavalry unit left. The other units have routed. He's got his archers there, but of course, as we know, there will be no match for that heavy enemy cavalry. Now, if that cavalry wins up there, the enemy could then come in behind us, smash into the rear of us there, and that could cause real problems. As I say, back to this massive defensive formation. As you can see, we're really pushing in troops there now. As I say, if we can start some of those units to chain route, as I say, because they're so close together, those enemy units, it's like an infection, and it could spread through the whole formation. So that's what we'd probably be looking to do there. But meanwhile, Legion, after a fierce battle up there with his cavalry and his alt-attack archers, it looks like they've been routed. And the enemy Cappadocian Cavalry and those Carthage Sacred Band Cavalry have been victorious there, and they have now got that cavalry in behind us. That could be a very dangerous position here, because that's a slight slope where they are, so they'd have a bit of a downhill cavalry bonus there as well if they charge down into the rear of us. So we'll have to watch that Cappadocian Cavalry and that Sacred Band Cavalry very closely. As I say, we're trying to concentrate on cracking and breaking that defensive formation, but we've got to have eyes in the back of our heads as well to watch out for the enemy cavalry. As you can see here, I'm moving my cavalry over to that flank there to try and cover that flank from that enemy cavalry. All the time, can you see we're putting pressure on that box there, that defensive box. That defensive formation is really having a lot of pressure on. Some of our units are still not thrown all their pilers, so we'll be throwing them in as well. But as I say, they got their generals in the centre of that formation, giving good morale bonus to their fighting troops. If you notice here, I'm pressurising the side of those Pontus units there, as well as got units engaged frontally, if you like, with the enemy spear and pikemen. But as I say, cleverly they've got their generals in the centre of their formation, as I say, giving that morale bonus. But as you can you see how we're gradually compressing that box? Do you remember how big it was at the beginning? Can you see how with the pressure we're putting on that box now, we're gradually kind of squeezing that box in, compressing it in there and throwing more units in. Notice we haven't thrown all our units in one go. We're kind of like throwing units in every now and then at maybe vulnerable parts of that formation that we can see. Remember, you don't need to throw all your units in one go. Keep units back. Fresh units are good to throw in, especially towards the end of the battle, because all those pikes on the outskirts of their formation will be tired. Whoa, right, okay, we just killed the Pontus general. Now we know Pontus morale's poor, so with a general dead, that could make them even more susceptible to routing. And like we said, if we could start some of those units routing, then that could well cause a chain wreck. Okay, just like to draw your attention, I can see the Macedon companion cavalry which we knew was hidden in the woods have now come out into the open. He's got 6 fresh units of companion cavalry there. Now it'll be interesting to see how well he uses that cavalry in relation to this battle, because if he smashes into the back of our tired engaged troops, that could be battle winning tactics there. So we just have to see what happens. We are aware of that Macedonian cavalry, Macedonian cavalry there. We are aware of that, but we also got to watch the Cappadocian cavalry and Sacred Band cavalry on the other flank there. As I say, Legion's lost all his cavalry now. I noticed Legion's put a unit into Testudo and is moving that unit into the spear units there. But all the time here we're watching this, if you notice there's some 3 fresh Cappadocian cavalry have come out to join those companion cavalry. So there are now 9 good cavalry units in behind us, trying to get Lee's general up. They know that if they could kill his general, that will lower the morale of his troops, but Lee spotted that and is moving his fast-moving general away. But we've still got to face 9 fresh cavalry units here. As I say, 6 Macedonian companion cavalry and the Cappadocian cavalry there. And they're ready to hit. Now our cavalry's already been engaged, and so our cavalry's a little bit battle damaged. But I'd just like to draw your attention to the position of my cavalry. Now I know we spoke about what I'd like to do is try and get a chain route going. Now what I'm thinking is here, if I charge my cavalry into maybe the flank of this formation, if I hit it hard with 5 cavalry, plus I've got lots of infantry engaged in there, maybe we might start routing some of the units, and we maybe could start that chain route I was talking about. But it is risky, because I could lose loads of cavalry if I do that, but the benefit of maybe starting a chain route could be worth it. So we'll just have to see. Let's say we're very aware of that Macedonian cavalry and that Cappadocian cavalry out there as well. If you notice here, I'm sending more units in, pressurising this part of the defensive formation here. Right, if you notice, I'm charging my cavalry in. As I say, what I want to try and do here is see if I can start a chain route. But whether I will or not, I don't know. It's very risky charging the cavalry in, but that's what I'm going to try and do. And bang, as that cavalry hits. Straight at it. Now, what I would like to do, what I would like to see is a lot of the enemy routing, but I'm not seeing that. You see my cavalry smashed in there. I'll be causing loads and loads of cavalry's casualties to the enemy and shocking them as well, which will lower their morale a bit. But if you notice, I can't see any enemy units routing at all, and I would have lost a bit of cavalry there in that attack. But if you notice, it's kind of disrupted that formation in that area there, that cavalry attack. Do you see how we've pushed that formation in, kind of disrupted it a little bit? So maybe the disruption there might have been worth charging that cavalry. And as I say, I was really going for, hopefully, a chain route, but it didn't work there. But I'm throwing more infantry into that. But if you notice there, that cavalry hit I've just put in there has disrupted that formation a little bit on that corner. And which, if you notice now, I'm throwing my infantry forward to try and exploit that disruption a bit on that corner of the box. If you notice that Mars has brought his Carthaginian general out there to join the other cavalry units. So that is now 10 enemy cavalry units out there. 6 of the Macedon cavalry, 3 Cappadocians, and the Carthage general now has moved out there as well. So that is now 10 units of enemy cavalry there. And here they come now. Now, usually Praetorian cavalry will normally beat Macedonian cavalry in a straight stand-up fight, all fresh cavalry kind of thing. But here, I'm not sure. You notice I'm moving my cavalry over as well to help support Maximus's cavalry here. He's got his general there. If you notice, I'm bringing 3 infantry units over as well to help with this. As you can see, those 3 Cappadocian cavalry are coming in as well. And bang, as that cavalry hits straight into my infantry there. Like, you see that Cappadocian cavalry. You can see a lot of the Macedon cavalry is starting to rout now. Soros got my cavalry in there. Maximus got his cavalry. I've got 3 infantry units in there as well. That Cappadocian cavalry, that was pretty tough. We're trying to kill the Carthage general as well. If we can kill the Carthage general, obviously that will lower the morale of his troops. But this could be a pivotal part of the battle here, because if the enemy wins here, they could have 9 cavalry units in behind us. So we really need to win this cavalry fight here. And it looks like we have. We've routed the companion cavalry. Notice he's got 2 companion cavalry he was going to bring into the fray, but decided to pull them back just at the last minute there. But we've managed to beat the Cappadocian cavalry and that companion cavalry there as well. So we've done well there to do that, because I say, if they'd have won that, they'd have had all that cavalry in behind us ready to charge straight into us there. Meanwhile, back to the defensive formation here. Can you notice that that defensive formation has now gone hollow? If you notice over there, they've still got cavalry and chariots there. But if you notice, as I say, that defensive box, let's just pause the game for a second, has gone hollow. Now that means that they've had to put out a lot of pike and spear units from the centre of that formation to shore up their defence around the edges. So that formation is now hollow in the centre. They've got no more reinforcements to be able to send out anywhere. So that goes to show how many casualties we must have caused that defensive formation for that formation to have gone so hollow, where they've sent out all their reinforcements now to, as I say, shore up the edges of that defensive box. If you notice there, Maximus up at the top there is chasing off enemy routers. As you can see there, now throwing all my infantry in on this flank. You can see several of the enemy units are starting to rout now under the pressure of our Roman troops forcing their way in there. That's one of the enemy generals just gone down there. I think that's the Greek. Is that the Greek city general's just been routed there, or just been killed?
The gods be praised! The enemy general is dead!
Right, if you notice, 2 units of Cappadocian cavalry looking to smash into the rear of our engaged troops there, and in they go, and bang, as they charge in there. But remember, Pontus' morale's not very good. Their general's dead, so it wouldn't surprise me if they routed. There you go. They routed quite quickly there. Remember, their morale, as we said, is not very good there, and I'll chase them off with what's left of my cavalry. But all the time we're pushing. Can you see here? Let's just pause the game for a minute. I think Legion put a couple of units in Testudo there to force his way through the pikes, and then he took them out at Testudo and then charged them on through that gap that he's forming there. Now you can see that he's actually punched a hole through the defensive box there with his green Brutii troops. Remember, there's a slight slope there, so he's got a slight downhill advantage there as he's charging in. But if you notice that all the way around that defensive box, we're pushing in, causing pressure on that defensive formation all the time. But it looks like, as I say, Legion's forced his way through with, I think he used Testudo, and now he's just come out of Testudo, and now he's just trying to make the most of that hole. He's just punched through that defensive line. If you notice, they're bringing a Macedon pike unit over to try and shore up that part of the battle line, but it looks to me like it's pretty broken there. Right, you see Maximus is charging his cavalry in from this side. You can see the defensive box is starting to fold in. It's starting to fall apart a little bit here as the units are routing, and we're forcing our way through. See the holes that we're forcing away, and this is where it could start that chain rout I was talking to you about. You remember the chain rout? Now, if you notice, a lot of the units, the enemy units there, are starting to just do that. They're just starting to chain rout. Now, the Carthaginian general's just been taken out. Right, can you see there what we were talking about? It's like an infection, a chain rout. Because those units are so close together, once you start getting people infected, if you see what I mean, it spreads quite quickly, and that's why that formation now has absolutely chain routed. Nice move there by Legion, using Testudo to force his way into the pikes, and then come out of Testudo and actually charge into them there to break through. That was a nice breakthrough there by Legion. As you can see there, we're just finishing off the enemy troops. If you notice, there's a Pontus chariot archer unit coming in, but as I say, the morale's so bad, and there's so many of our troops there, probably rout on contact. I was thinking there, yeah, there you go. Routed on contact. He'd alt attack there, but routed on contact. Let's just pause the game for a second. So as you can see here, I thought this was a good example of a really massive defensive box of all spears and pikes, and looked very, very formidable at the front. But we had to get our tactical thinking caps on here on how we were going to try and break that defensive formation, and somehow we managed to do it. But remember, when you've got all Romans there, that's a heck of a lot of pillars they can throw. Remember this cavalry battle out here. If we'd have lost that cavalry battle and those enemy cavalry had got in behind us, they could have smashed into the rear of our tired engaged troops and could well have changed the course of the battle. So we did well to win that little cavalry battle there. And as you can see over here, Legion put up a good fight with his cavalry and alt attack archers there as well. He weakened the enemy cavalry up there considerably, but they of course could have smashed into the rear of us as well if enough of them had survived that battle, so he did really well there. So as you can see there, and we're just finishing off the rest of the enemy troops. As I say, I thought this was just a good example here of a really massive pike and spear defensive formation there. a really formidable formation, and how Rome, our Rome armies had to try and break that formation. And I just thought, you know, it was a good example for maybe newer players, especially to Rome Total War, to see how that happened. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is really well played to everybody in the game. I'd just like to say really well done to Mars, Lightsaber, Trajan and Greek USA, King Almighty. I thought that was something different forming that massive defensive formation up there. So really well done, guys. That was, you know, something different. And I hope that people watching this battle would agree that that was something different there. So really well done. As you say, you didn't get many kills because they went defensive. Remember, RTW rewards attacking players. If you go defensive, you don't get that many kills. I'd like to draw your attention to Legion and Lee. Look at the kills they've got. Yes, they were fighting the big 120-man units, but to get 2,304 and to get 2,114 kills, really well done to Legion and Lee there. I say, well done, guys. Actually, Maximus and myself didn't get that many kills, but I think we did our part in the battle as well. So once again, really well done to Mars, Lightsaber, Trajan, Greek USA, King Almighty. Well done, guys. As I say, it was nice to see something different there, and that was a real great formidable defensive formation, and we really had to think about how we were going to break that formation. You had good troops there as well. I liked how you kept the generals in the middle of that formation, giving good general morale bonus to your fighting troops. So really well done, guys. But also I'd like to say really well done to Maximus, Legion 22 and Lee. That was a formidable defensive formation we faced, but between us we managed to actually crack it, so really well done. And hopefully that was a good example of how you can do that to a big defensive box to newer players to Rome Total War. Okay, Spartan Commander saying bye for now, and see you soon.